Hi, I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. Last night, James and myself did a live Q&A and we had a guest on called Liam. And Liam was asking how to avoid procrastination. So what I thought I'd do in this video is to give my tips on creativity. So let's get to it. My first tip is to just start something. I've got many projects on my hard drives that are just initial ideas. And I've had times in my career where I've really been unable to finish songs. And I can assure you the hardest part of any project is that initial blank project window. So I can really recommend getting any idea that you have down. Now I have a folder on my desktop which is just labeled ideas. Now what I do is I go through, and even if I've just got like a short idea, an 8-bar idea, I will bounce that down and I will store that to that folder window. Now what that enables me to do is at any point just open that folder and to see if there's anything that inspires me. I've had many days where I can't seem to get past the first 8 bars, and what I tend to do is I just put down those 8-bar ideas, and you leave the studio feeling completely frustrated, but you come back in the next day and I can guarantee, because you've exercised that creative muscle, you'll find it much easier to start and finish a project. Which brings me on to my next tip. Creativity is a muscle that needs exercising. Set yourself a goal of showing up every single day for a set amount of time. Now that doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, but you showing up and doing that every single day will really help to exercise that creative muscle and help you finish projects. Tip number 3 is use templates. Now I have a template on my DAW that I start every single project with. Now this template has effects pre-installed on it, so I know that if I need inspiration or I need something to sound a particular way, I could just call up that effect and dial it in. Let me show you what I mean. As soon as I load up my DAW, I've got a few different reverbs, I've got a few different delays. I'll have a quarter note delay, I'll have an eighth note delay, and a ping pong delay, and a bunch of different reverbs, as I say, just ready to add to those parts. So I haven't got to load up a send and then load up all those different effects. And I can add those effects as and when it inspires me. Let me explain what I mean by a template and how I use a template. So I've got this guitar sound. Now it's a good dry guitar sound, but I want to feel a bit more inspired when I'm playing. So what I can do is to add some reverb and delay to that. So let's have a look. So here's my track. So say I want to add some reverb to that. Just can bring up my lexicon. And then maybe I want to add some delay to that as well. So I can bring up my dotted eighth note delay here, and it sounds like this. Right, let's try and record that part. Now, you'll hear how different that sounds if I take all those effects off. And let's bring in the effects. My next tip is don't be afraid to commit. Now what I mean by that is don't be afraid to record or print the effects when you're recording. Say you're a guitar player and a particular effects pedal is inspiring you. Don't be afraid to record that down with the part. I can guarantee that if your sound isn't inspiring, your take will suffer. You can always record a dry version later on. So I've muted the effects on my DAW, and now here's the effects built into the aux box. And then if I want a dry signal, I can just bring that back. create an environment to be creative. So if that's your studio, for me, I like it to be neat and tidy. Now this means tidying up the day before, not on the day that you want to be creative. So what I tend to do before I leave the studio every evening is just to make sure that everything's tidy. So when I arrive the next morning, I haven't got to worry about tidying up or cleaning or doing any of that stuff. Be ready for when creativity strikes. So I like to have everything set up ready for when creativity does strike. So for instance, if I'm doing guitar stuff, all my guitar amps are set up, my pedal board's plugged in. So I know if I come up with an idea, I can switch everything on and just get it down straight away, as opposed to having to find a load of leads, plug a load of leads in, plug all the amps in, trying to get everything sorted. By that time, 30 minutes has passed and creativity has completely disappeared. If you're a singer, I really recommend getting a dictaphone or using the voice memos on your phone. A friend of the show, Jack Rubinacci, recently did a video on his channel where he shows how he writes a song on his Apple Watch. Now, we've all got smartphones and we've all got ways of recording voice memos, and I really recommend using that. So you might be out shopping, you might be out for a walk, but you've always got a way of recording that creative idea. My next tip is to work quickly and not to fuss over perfect takes. Now what I mean by this is, if you're recording on your DAW, I really recommend just getting the ideas down, and you can always work on perfecting those parts later on. Now what tends to happen with me is when I'm writing a song or when I'm writing a part, I'll end up just putting all these parts down, and then when I come down to actually perfecting those parts, I tend to prefer the parts that I initially put down. Now that's because I was in a creative mood and I was inspired to write and record at that particular point. Sometimes when you come back and you redo parts, you don't actually have that inspiration. So I really recommend just getting the parts down as good as you can, but not fussing over them. My next tip is to collaborate. The best songs I've ever been involved in have been collaborations. Find a songwriter that you respect and work with them. Don't be arrogant and think that you can do everything yourself. 50% of a great song is way better than 100% of a crap song. And try and find people that have a different skill set to you. My next tip is to set yourself a deadline. You'll be amazed how much more efficient you can be if you actually have the pressure of a deadline. So you can think, hour 1, write the parts, hour 2, programming drums, hour 3, keyboard parts, hour 4, guitar parts. And I highly recommend you do exactly the same for mixing. My last tip is don't get involved with left and right brain tasks in the same session. There's a time to be creative and there's a time to problem solve. If you split these two up, you'll be amazed how much more efficient the creative side of your brain can be. I'm Paul from the Studio Rats. I really hope you guys got something out of this. If you did get something out of it, don't forget to like and subscribe and click on that bell button and you'll be notified of any future videos that come out from the Studio Rats. If you've got any comments, don't forget to leave them below. I'd love to see and I'd love to hear the sort of music that you guys are producing, so you can always leave links in the comments below. I'm Paul and I'll see you next time. Cheers.